The 5:30 a.m. alarm was a pointless shriek. Alex Riley was already awake, staring at the water stains on the ceiling of his third-floor walk-up. He was 29 years old and felt at least double that. Weak gray Detroit light filtered through the blinds, illuminating the battlefield of his life. Stacks of ungraded American history papers covered his small kitchen table. Textbooks formed precarious towers by the sofa. The apartment smelled of stale coffee and the quiet desperation of unmet deadlines. He stood in front of his closet, which contained exactly one suit. It was a dark charcoal purchased 5 years ago for his college graduation. The fabric was thin now, shiny at the elbows. It was the uniform of a high school history teacher, not the heir of a shipping magnate. He laid it on his unmade bed, smoothing wrinkles with his hand. His gaze drifted to his wallet on the dresser. Inside sat $47. His 1999 Honda Civic, parked 3 blocks away, had its gas light on. The brakes had been making a terrible scraping sound for a week. He faced a very real, very pathetic choice. He could buy a new black tie to make the old suit look respectful, or he could put gas in the car. He could not do both. The gas won. The car had to get him there. The tie he would have to do. He was fumbling with the knot, the fabric stiff and unfamiliar, when his phone vibrated on the nightstand. The screen glowed with her name, Jessica. For a single naive second, he expected comfort. He answered. He received an order. "Alex, you are not driving that car." Her voice was high and tight, the one she used for difficult clients. Jessica was 28 years old, a rising star in Detroit real estate, and she possessed a brutal understanding of appearances. "Jess, good morning. It's fine, it will get me there," he said, his voice rough with sleep. "No, Alex, it is not fine," she snapped, her patience already gone. "This is Arthur Vance's funeral. The entire city will be there. You cannot. I mean it. You absolutely cannot arrive at the Vance estate in that rattling pile of junk. It is embarrassing. For you. For me." Alex closed his eyes. He could picture her perfectly already dressed, pacing her immaculate condo downtown, disgusted. "What do you want me to do, Jessica?" "I already handled it. I called Ethan. You must ride with him. He is picking you up in 30 minutes. I will meet you at the church. And Alex." She paused, the silence heavy with disappointment. "Please, try to look presentable." The line clicked dead. She had not asked him how he felt. She had not offered a single word of condolence. She had not mentioned his grandfather. She had only seen a problem, a social stain, and scrubbed it clean. Alex lowered the phone. A familiar heavy exhaustion settled deep in his bones. It was not grief. He felt almost nothing for Arthur Vance. The man had been a monolith, a distant, intimidating figure of immense wealth and cold silence. In Alex's entire life, he could count the number of real conversations they had on one hand. He had not come to mourn a man he barely knew. He had come because attendance was required. No, this exhaustion was dread, a deep, acidic fear of the next few hours. He was afraid of the family reunion. He feared the sea of black Armani and pearl necklaces, the polished smiles that did not reach the eyes, and the silent, constant calculations happening behind them. For Alex Riley, family was not a word of comfort. It was a synonym for judgment, and he was about to walk underprepared and poorly dressed directly into the courtroom. Ethan's black Mercedes purred up the long, winding driveway to the Vance estate. The house was not a home. It was a statement of power, all gray stone and dark glass, looking down on the city of Detroit like a bored monarch. Hundreds of guests, all draped in expensive black, moved across the perfect lawns like actors in a somber play. They were the city's most powerful, judges, bankers, politicians, and they had all come to circle. Alex stepped out of the car and immediately felt his cheap suit prickle against his skin. The air here was different, colder, thinner. Inside the grand hall, flowers were everywhere, arranged in massive, tasteful, and utterly joyless displays. A string quartet played something classical and sad in a far corner, but the music was drowned out by the confident murmur of networking. He saw his family not gathered together, but positioned strategically. His uncle Marcus Vance, who was 55, stood with his wife Eleanor, who was 52. They were not near the casket. They were near the lawyer, Mr. Davies. Their heads were bowed, not in grief, but in quiet, intense conversation. Their eyes, like a hawk's, never left the polished leather briefcase Mr. Davies held at his side. They were not mourning a brother. They were guarding a vault. Then he saw his cousin Chloe. 28 years old and dressed in a black dress that probably cost more than Alex's car. She was standing near the open casket, her back to her grandfather. Her phone was out. She pursed her lips into a sad pout, took a photo, and then immediately frowned at the screen, tapping furiously, checking the filters. She was curating her grief for Instagram. And there, holding court by the massive fireplace, was Ethan. At 30 years old, Ethan was the family's crown prince. His Armani suit fit him like a second skin, a perfect $5,000 shell of arrogance. He was not whispering. He was booming into his phone, waving one hand in the air. "No, I told them the transition has to be seamless," Ethan barked loud enough for half the room to hear. "The board needs to understand that my grandfather's vision is secure. My vision. As of tomorrow, we are streamlining the entire logistics division." He was already sitting in the CEO's chair. Alex just stood there, a ghost at his own family's gathering. He wanted to get a drink or find a bathroom or simply disappear into the wallpaper. Then Jessica found him. She glided through the crowd, a vision in a perfectly tailored black suit, her blonde hair pulled back in a severe, elegant bun. She did not hug him. She grabbed his elbow. "There you are," she hissed, pulling him into an alcove. Her eyes were bright, not with tears, but with calculating energy. "Did you see him?" "Who, Ethan? Jess, he's on the phone." "Of course he is, Alex. He's working. He is securing his future. That is a man who knows what he wants." She squeezed his arm, her nails digging in slightly. "You should learn from him. This is not just a funeral. It is an opportunity. Your Uncle Marcus is right over there. This is your chance to finally impress him. Go talk to him. Show him you are a Vance. Do not just stand in the corner like you do not belong here. Jess, it is a funeral. My grandfather just died." "Do not be naive," she said, her voice sharp and low. "Your grandfather is gone. The empire is up for grabs. Stop being a history teacher and start being a part of this family." Before he could answer, Ethan's loud laugh cut through the room. He had ended his call and spotted them. He strode over, a predatory grin on his face. "Alex, Jessica, glad you could make it," he said, clapping Alex hard on the shoulder. The force almost staggered him. "Good of you to show up." He looked Alex up and down, his eyes lingering on the 5-year-old suit. "Nice threads." He turned his full attention to Jessica, his smile warming. "You look incredible as always." "Ethan," Jessica said, her voice now smooth as silk, "we were just saying how impressive your transition plan sounds." Ethan's chest puffed out. "Just handling business. Someone has to." He turned back to Alex, the grin returning. "So, cousin, how is the hobby going? Still teaching those kids how to color inside the lines? Good for you. That is just great. At least one of us has a passion project." Chloe, having perfected her sad selfie, drifted over and giggled at Ethan's comment. Alex felt the blood rush to his face. He felt Jessica's sharp glare on his cheek, demanding he say something impressive, witty, strong. He just nodded. "Something like that, Ethan." The condescending pat on his shoulder, the casual dismissal, it all suddenly threw Alex back in time. 10 years ago, he was 19. He was in Arthur Vance's vast, silent study, a room that smelled of old leather and pipe tobacco. They were the only two in the house, seated across a marble chessboard. Alex had just made a defensive move, saving his knight from a pin. Arthur Vance had stared at the board for a full minute, not moving. Then he looked up, his gray eyes piercing. "You play just like your father," Arthur had said, his voice a low rumble. "Is that good?" Alex had asked. "No, it is predictable. You are too worried about protecting your pieces. You are not focused on winning the game." The 19-year-old Alex, filled with a college student's idealism, had bristled. "I do not want to sacrifice everything just to win." Arthur had leaned back. He looked at Alex for a very long time, as if seeing him for the first time. A strange, unreadable expression crossed his face. "Perhaps," Arthur said very softly, "perhaps that is the only reason you are still interesting." Now, standing in the cold grand hall, Alex felt that same look. From Jessica, from Ethan, from his aunt and uncle. They were all players in a game he did not understand, or worse, a game he refused to play. And for that he was not interesting. He was just in the way. After the hollow platitudes of the funeral, the core family was summoned to Arthur Vance's study. The room itself was an act of intimidation. Dark oak paneling covered every wall, floor to ceiling. The air was thick with the scent of old leather floor wax and the faint dusty smell of books that had not been opened in decades. It was a room built for power, not comfort. Alex sat in a small hard chair in the corner as far from the massive mahogany desk as possible. Jessica sat beside him, her posture rigid. She squeezed his hand not for comfort but as a silent command to sit up straight, to look like he belonged. Across from them on plush leather sofas sat the rest. Marcus Vance, his finger tapping a fast, impatient rhythm on his knee. Eleanor, his wife, perfectly still, her hands clasped in her lap. Ethan lounged, all false casualness, one expensive shoe resting on his knee. Chloe was checking her makeup in a small, compact mirror. Mr. Davies, a man who looked as old and dry as the documents he held, sat behind the desk. He put on a pair of gold-rimmed glasses and cleared his throat. The tapping from Marcus stopped. The air in the room became so thick it was hard to breathe. "We are all gathered," Mr. Davies began, his voice a dry monotone, "to read the last will and testament of Arthur Vance." He opened the large leather-bound document. "I will skip the usual preamble and proceed to the bequests." The room was utterly silent save for the rustle of paper. "To my brother, Marcus Vance, and his wife, Eleanor Vance." Mr. Davies read, "I bequeath all properties currently held in the Hamptons, New York, as well as the entirety of the primary Vance investment portfolio, currently valued at several $1,000,000. Alex watched his uncle Marcus nod a slow, satisfied motion. Eleanor closed her eyes for a brief second, a faint smile touching her lips. They had won. "To my granddaughter Chloe Vance," the lawyer continued, "I bequeath the yacht currently named the Serenity and a trust fund to be established in her name in the amount of $2 million. Chloe let out a tiny gasp that sounded more like a squeak. She put her hand to her chest, her eyes wide with a performer's delight. $2 million. "To my grandson, Ethan Vance," Mr. Davies said, his voice unchanging. Ethan, who had been leaning back now, leaned forward. "I bequeath the Vance penthouse property in Manhattan. Furthermore, I hereby nominate and appoint him to the position of Chief Executive Officer of Vance Shipping Industries, effective immediately." Ethan's grin was wide and victorious. He looked at his father, Marcus, who gave him a single proud nod. The prince had just been crowned king. There was a pause. Mr. Davies shuffled a paper. Alex felt Jessica's grip on his hand tighten to the point of pain. Everyone in the room had been named. Everyone had become monumentally wealthy, except him. Mr. Davies looked down at the final page. He looked up, his gaze passing over his glasses, and found Alex in the corner. The room, sensing the final, strange piece of business, held its breath. And finally, Mr. Davies read, "For my grandson, Alex Riley, I leave this." The lawyer did not point to a property or a stock certificate. He reached into his briefcase, bypassed the thick, important folders, and pulled out a small, thin, white paper envelope. It was crumpled at the corners. It looked like something one might use to pay a paper boy. He held it out. The silence that followed was absolute. It was heavy, confused, and total. For 2 full seconds, no one moved. Then Ethan broke it. He let out a single sharp bark of a laugh. "You have got to be kidding me," he said, his voice booming in the quiet room. "An envelope." Chloe, catching on, fumbled for her phone. She turned the camera on Alex, her hand covering her mouth to hide her grin. "Oh my God," she whispered. "His face is priceless." Alex felt frozen. He stood up on numb legs, walked the long distance to the desk, and took the small light envelope from the lawyer's hand. It felt like nothing. He turned it over. His name was not even on it. He fumbled with the flap. Inside was a single folded piece of paper. It was an airline confirmation printed from a website. 1 passenger, Alex Riley. 1 way. Class economy. Departure Detroit. Arrival Rome. The flight left in 48 hours. A plane ticket. The voice was not his. It was Jessica's. She had stood up her chair, scraping loudly, violently against the polished wooden floor. A plane ticket. She repeated, her voice no longer a whisper, but a sharp, vibrating blade of pure rage. She was not looking at the lawyer or at Ethan. She was staring directly at Alex. Her face, which was always so perfectly composed, was now a mask of pure, undiluted contempt. "Is this a joke? Is Arthur humiliating you from the grave?" She shook her head, a small, violent motion. Unbelievable. Ethan, emboldened by her reaction, bounded up from the sofa. He snatched the paper from Alex's stunned hand. "Let me see that," he crowed, unfolding it for the room to see. "Rome! Very nice. Oh, and look," he pointed to a line. "Economy class, seat 34E. That is a middle seat cousin." He laughed a full, booming, cruel laugh and shoved the paper back into Alex's chest. "Fantastic. The teacher gets a vacation. Do not worry, Alex. Check the envelope again. Maybe he left you some frequent flyer miles to go with it." "There is one more item." Mr. Davies's voice cut cleanly through the laughter. The room once again went quiet. Ethan stopped, a smirk still on his face. The lawyer reached back into his briefcase. "There is also a personal letter from Mr. Riley. My instructions from Mr. Vance were clear. It is to be opened only upon his arrival in Rome." He held out a second envelope. This one was different. It was heavy, cream-colored cardstock sealed with a formal red wax stamp. This new layer of mystery, this absurd theatrical cherry on top of the insulting cake, was too much. Marcus and Ethan burst into loud, unrestrained laughter. It was not a chuckle. It was a full-throated belly laugh at the sheer ridiculousness of it all. The teacher with his economy ticket and his secret magic letter. Alex did not hear them. He did not hear anything. He took the second envelope. He just stared at the plane ticket, the three letters ROME seeming to burn on the page. Jessica did not wait. She did not say goodbye. She turned her back rigid and walked out of the study. She did not close the door quietly. The slam of the heavy oak barrier echoed through the room, a final, definitive, punctuating sound. Alex was left alone, surrounded by the laughter of his family, holding a ticket to nowhere. He did not drive home with Ethan. He took a taxi he could not afford, the two envelopes feeling heavy and toxic in his jacket pocket. The silence in the cab was a temporary relief, a brief pocket of nothingness between the humiliation in the study and whatever awaited him at home. He walked into his apartment and knew instantly that the day's destruction was not over. Jessica was in the bedroom. An open, expensive suitcase was on the bed. She was not folding. She was throwing blouses, shoes, makeup bags. Her movements were sharp, angry, and efficient. "Jess," his voice sounded weak, unfamiliar to his own ears. "I cannot, Alex," she said, not looking at him. She yanked a handful of dresses on their hangers from the closet, the metal scraping loudly. "I just cannot." "What are you doing? Please just stop for a second. Let's talk about this." She stopped. She turned. Her face was not sad. It was cold hard and appraised him with a terrifying finality. "Talk about what, Alex?" "Talk about the fact that your family just spat in your face in front of everyone. Talk about the economy class plane ticket. What is there to talk about?" "Jessica, it is just money," he pleaded, taking a step toward her. "It is just a crazy, mean joke by an old man. It does not matter. We have each other. That is what matters." She laughed. It was a sharp, ugly sound that cut him to the core. "Really?" she said, her voice dripping with a cynicism he had never heard. "Just money. That is easy for you to say. You have never cared about it. You are content to grade papers for $50,000 a year." "That is my job, Jess. I am a teacher." "It is a hobby, Alex," she snapped. "I have spent 3 years, 3 entire years waiting for you to catch up. I defended you. I told my parents, I told my colleagues, he is a Vance. He is just figuring things out. He has potential. I thought at the bare minimum you came from this family. I thought when the old man finally died, you would at least get a position, a trust fund, an office, a start." She grabbed a pair of heels and threw them into the bag. "But what is this, a one-way ticket to nowhere and a pile of student debt? Your cousin becomes the CEO of a multi-million-dollar corporation and you get a middle seat." She zipped the suitcase, the sound like a final tearing of cloth. "I cannot bet my future on a loser, Alex. I will not." The word hung in the air. Loser. It was the same word Ethan's eyes had said. It was the same word his uncle's laugh had implied. But hearing it from her, it became a fact. "Jess, please," he whispered, the last of his pride crumbling. She walked past him, pulling the suitcase on its wheels. She stopped at the small dining table, the one covered in his ungraded papers. She looked at the stacks of student work with complete disdain. Then she twisted the diamond ring from her finger. It had been her dream ring. It had taken him 18 months to pay for it on his teacher's salary. She did not hand it to him. She did not place it down. She threw it. The ring hit the table, bounced off a stack of essays on the American Revolution, and clattered onto the cheap laminate floor. "I am done," she said. Her voice was flat. All the anger was gone, replaced by a chilling emptiness. "Have fun in Rome." She walked out. The door clicked shut. The deadbolt slid into place. He heard the jingle of her keys as she locked him in, then the sharp fading click of her heels on the hallway floor. He stood motionless for a minute, then 5. The humiliation from his family had been sharp, a public stinging. This was a mortal wound. This was a complete hollowing out. This was destruction. He slowly bent down and picked up the ring. It looked small and stupid in his palm. He sank onto the sofa, the one with the sagging cushion. The adrenaline that had carried him through the day drained away, leaving a cold, terrifying void. He pulled out his phone, his thumb moving automatically. He opened his banking app. The numbers glowed in the dimming light of his apartment. Checking account $1,847.23. His rent $1,200 was due at the end of the week. Alex did not sleep. The gray light of morning simply replaced the darkness, finding him in the exact same spot on his sagging couch. The apartment was suffocatingly silent. Jessica's engagement ring was a small, mocking glint of silver on the floor by the table. He ignored it. He had a responsibility, a job. He rubbed his face, his skin feeling like paper. He had to email the school principal. He needed a substitute teacher for the rest of the week. He typed "family emergency," and the lie tasted like ash in his mouth. He was trying to figure out how to attach his lesson plans when his phone, clutched in his hand, began to buzz. The screen lit up. It was not a saved contact, just an unknown number with a Detroit area code. He almost ignored it, assuming it was a spam call about his car's extended warranty. A dark irony, considering his car was worthless. He pressed the green icon. "Hello? Is this Mr. Alex Riley?" The voice was a woman's, crisp, professional, and utterly devoid of emotion. "Yes, this is he." "Mr. Riley, my name is Ms. Evans. I am calling from the Commercial Bank of Detroit. This call concerns a delinquent account." Alex frowned, his tired brain struggling to catch up. "I think you have the wrong number. I do not bank with you. Our records show you are the primary co-signatory on a business line of credit, Mr. Riley. Account number 774B. The primary account holder is Mr. Ethan Vance." A cold spike of adrenaline shot through Alex's exhaustion. "Ethan Vance. Yes, sir. The account is valued at $50,000. It is currently 92 days past due. We have sent multiple notices to the primary address with no response." Alex's heart began to hammer against his ribs. 50,000, no. That is impossible. There is a mistake. I co-signed a student loan for Ethan. It was $5,000. 5, not 50. You have made a mistake. "Sir, there is no mistake," Ms. Evans said. Her voice held the chilling patience of a machine. "This is not a student loan. It is a revolving business credit line opened 2 years ago. We have a legally binding signatory agreement with your signature dated May 4th, 2022. As the CO signatory, you are fully and equally liable for the entire amount. Since Mr. Vance has defaulted, we are now proceeding with collection actions against you." "Collection actions?" Alex stood up, his legs shaking. "What does that mean?" "It means Mr. Riley, that, as of this morning, a hold is being placed on all known assets linked to your Social Security number. We will be freezing your bank accounts immediately. Furthermore, a lien is being placed on your vehicle, a 1999 Honda Civic. We will be sending a team to seize the vehicle by the end of the week. You have 72 hours to contact our legal department to arrange payment for the full $50,000 plus interest and penalties." "Wait, freeze my accounts. You cannot do that. I have rent due. I only have—" He stopped himself, glancing at his banking app still open from the night before. $1,847.23. "Sir, the action is already in process. As the CO signatory, you agreed to these terms." Alex hung up. The phone slipped from his numb hand and clattered onto the floor beside the ring. He stared at the water stain on the wall. $50,000. Seize his car. Freeze his accounts. It was impossible. It made no sense. And then, with a sickening, plummeting lurch, it made perfect sense. The memory flooded back, sharp and humiliating. It was 2 years ago, a rainy Tuesday in the spring. He was late running across the university campus trying to get to his night class on time. Ethan had caught him in the parking lot, all smiles and frantic manufactured energy. "Alex, 'cause you are saving my life," Ethan had said, shoving a clipboard and a pen at him. He was wearing a new watch, Alex remembered that. "It is just some stupid paperwork for my MBA student loan. My credit is temporarily frozen because of a dispute, and the deadline is literally right now. It is just $5,000, just a formality. Sign here and here." Alex had been in a hurry. He was annoyed, but it was Ethan. Family. He had scribbled his name, Alex Riley, on the 2 yellow highlighted lines without reading a single word of the fine print. "Just 5,000, he had confirmed. "Just 5, I swear," Ethan had said, grabbing the clipboard. "You're the best." He had not been signing for a student loan. He had been signing for a $50,000 business line of credit. Ethan, his cousin, had looked him in the eye and lied. He had used Alex's clean, stable, unimportant credit to secure a massive loan. And then for 2 years he had apparently not made a single payment. And yesterday, that same man, that liar, that thief, had laughed at him. He had mocked his cheap suit. He had joked about his economy ticket while knowing that he had just strapped a $50,000 bomb to Alex's back. The humiliation of the will reading felt like a paper cut. The pain of Jessica leaving felt like a deep bruise. This was an amputation. He was not just the family joke. He was not just dumped. He was ruined. He was trapped. He was on the hook for $50,000. He did not have money that was stolen by a man who had just inherited an entire company. He was drowning, and his own cousin was the one holding his head under water. He sat on the floor, leaning against the sofa for an hour, or maybe it was 3. Time had stopped. The sun moved across the floor, illuminating the diamond ring, then the phone, then the dust bunnies under his coffee table. He was a statue of despair. He had nothing. He was nothing. He had one call to make, the only person left in the world who had to answer. He picked up his phone and dialed. "Mom." His voice broke. He did not have to say anything else. Sarah Riley was a nurse. She worked the night shift in the emergency room. She had seen everything, and she moved with a purpose that chaos could not touch. She was at his apartment in 45 minutes. She used her own key. She walked in and stopped. She did not need to ask questions. Her eyes, sharp and analytical, took in the entire scene in one sweep. She saw the empty space in the coat closet where Jessica's expensive winter coat used to hang. She saw the indentation on the carpet where the suitcase had been dragged. She saw her son Alex sitting on the floor looking like a ghost, his eyes hollow. And she saw the faint gleam of the diamond ring on the laminate. She walked over, picked it up, and tossed it onto the kitchen counter with a sound of disgust. "Good riddance," she said, her voice firm. "Mom, Shh," she said. She walked over and sat on the floor next to him. She did not hug him. She just sat, a solid, warm presence beside him. "What did they do, Alex? What did those bastards really do?" he told her. He told her about the will, the envelope, the plane ticket, the laughter. And then, his voice cracking, he told her about the $50,000 phone call, the business loan, the lie, the frozen accounts, the car. Sarah did not cry. She did not panic. Her face hardened, and a cold, quiet anger lit her eyes, an anger Alex had rarely seen. "Marcus," she said, her voice low and furious. "That son of a bitch, and his boy, just like him." She looked at Alex. "They have always hated your father because he was better than them, because he got away, and now they are doing the same to you. They are trying to break you." "They did, Mom," Alex whispered. "I am broken. I am ruined. I have nothing." "No," she said, her voice like steel. She stood up, pulling him to his feet. "You are not. You are a Riley. Now you are going to pack a bag." "Pack a bag, Mom, did you hear me? I cannot go anywhere. I am $50,000 in debt. They are seizing my car. They froze my account. I have to stay here and I do not know what I am going to do." "You are going to Rome," Sarah said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "I cannot," he yelled, the first real energy he had shown. "It is a joke, a cruel prank. There is nothing in Rome but more humiliation." "You do not know that," she said, marching to his desk and grabbing his checkbook. "Listen to me, Alex. Arthur Vance was many things. He was cold, he was calculating. He was a bastard in his own way, but he was not a fool. He did not do things without a reason. He did not play a game he did not intend to win. That ticket, That letter, it is not a joke. It is the most important thing he ever gave you. It is the final move in his game." She opened her purse, took out her own checkbook, and scribbled furiously. She tore out the check and pushed it into his hand. "This is $2,000, she said. "It is my emergency fund. I was saving it for a new roof. The roof can wait. You cannot. This will get you to the airport, and it will keep you afloat until you figure out what that letter says." "Mom, no, I cannot take your money." "You can, and you will. I will call the bank. I will deal with Ms. Evans. I will put a stop payment on that fraudulent loan. I will hire a lawyer. I will raise hell. Your job is to get on that plane. Your job is to finish the game." She went into his bedroom, pulled out a small duffel bag, and threw it on his bed. Then she stopped. She walked to her own purse and pulled out a small velvet-covered box. It was old, the corners worn white. "This," she said, "was your father's. He gave it to me before he died. He said Arthur gave it to him a long time ago, and that I should give it to you when you were truly lost. I think," she said, her voice softening for the first time, "that time is now." Alex's hands trembled. He took the box. He opened it. Inside, on a bed of faded black satin, sat a brass compass. It was old, dented. The glass face was cracked. He picked it up. It was heavy. The needle did not point north. It spun idly, uselessly in a slow circle. But etched onto the brass lid, he saw a strange, intricate symbol. It was a single twisting grapevine wrapped around a tall stone tower. "Your father said he used it to find his true north," Sarah said softly. Alex looked at the spinning, useless needle. He looked at the impossible check in his other hand. He looked at the one-way plane ticket on his desk. He had no fiancée. He had no apartment, really. He had no money. He had no car. He was $50,000 in debt. He had absolutely nothing left to lose. The taxi ride to the Detroit Metro Airport was a symphony of agony. Every tick of the meter was a fresh wound. Each dollar part of the $2,000 his mother had pressed into his hand felt like stolen blood. He bought a bottle of water past security. It cost $4. He stared at the receipt, feeling the absurdity of it, the criminal waste. He was $50,000 in debt, and he had just paid $4 for water. He was in boarding group 9, the last to be called. He walked the long tunnel onto the plane, past the wide plush seats of first class. Men who looked like his Uncle Marcus were already sipping champagne, their legs crossed, reading financial papers. Alex averted his gaze, his face burning. He found his seat, 34E. It was exactly what Ethan had laughed about. A middle seat wedged between two large men. One was already overflowing the armrest, smelling faintly of onions. The other was typing furiously on a laptop, his elbow jamming into Alex's ribs. Alex crammed his single duffel bag under the seat in front of him, sat down, and tried to shrink himself. The cabin door closed with a heavy final thud. The engines began to whine. He was trapped. A suffocating, high-altitude panic began to claw at his throat. He was in a pressurized metal tube hurtling 700 miles an hour away from his entire life. But his problems were not staying behind. They were coming with him. He thought of Ethan. Right now, at this very moment, Ethan was probably sitting in Arthur's massive oak office. He was the CEO. He was signing papers, giving orders, his $5,000 suit unwrinkled. He was probably planning a celebratory dinner with his father, laughing about the joke of the economy ticket. He thought of Jessica. She was already gone. He pictured her in her pristine condo, deleting his photos from her phone. She was probably already texting her friends, framing the breakup as a narrow escape, a smart business decision. He was a loser, a bad investment. She might even be getting dressed for a date with a real estate broker, someone successful, someone who was not a joke. And he thought of the debt, $50,000. The number was a living monster. It was breathing down his neck. It was sitting in his lap. It was growing larger with every minute of interest. He was a teacher. He made $50,000 in an entire year before taxes. He could work for 20 years and never pay this off, not while trying to live. Ethan had not just stolen money from him, he had stolen his future. Alex's hand fumbled in his jacket pocket. He pulled out the thin, crumpled paper envelope that had held the plane ticket. He turned it over and over in his hands. He was looking for an answer, a clue, anything. On the corner, so faint it was almost invisible, he saw a number. It was written in faded pencil in an old-fashioned looping script. 1947, 1947. His history teacher's brain supplied the context instantly. The year after the war ended. The year his grandfather, Arthur Vance, had been honorably discharged from the United States Army. A random, meaningless number. His fingers brushed the other pocket. The heavy, cold lump. He pulled out the small brass compass. He clicked open the dented lid. Under the cracked glass, the needle was doing what it always did. Spinning. Lazily, uselessly turning in a slow circle pointing northeast, then south, then west. It pointed everywhere, which meant it pointed nowhere. He felt a kinship with the broken object. He was just like it. A man with no direction. A man whose true north was a lie. The plane roared. The engine screamed, and a massive, shuddering force pressed him back into the thin cushion of seat 34E. The ground fell away. The man beside him was already snoring, his head lolling. Alex closed his eyes. He was airborne. He was a fugitive from his own life, flying to a strange country with less than $2,000 to his name, hunted by a debt he could never pay. All he had was a secret letter and a broken compass. He flew into the darkness, holding on to one tiny, terrifying hope. The hope that this was not the end of the joke, that this somehow was the beginning of the punchline. The 9-hour flight was a compressed, airless hell. Alex emerged from the plane into the Fiumicino airport in Rome, not as a person, but as a collection of aches and anxieties. His back throbbed from the middle seat. His eyes burned from lack of sleep. His brain was a fog of jet lag and low-grade terror. He followed the massive, surging crowd, a human river flowing toward customs. He did not understand a word. The air was filled with rapid, musical Italian, the announcements echoing incomprehensibly overhead. He felt invisible and clumsy, his single duffel bag banging against his knee. He made it through customs, the officer stamping his passport with a bored, indifferent thud. He was officially in Italy, a country he had never seen, where he knew no one. Alex stopped at the edge of the chaotic arrivals hall. A wall of noise hit him. People were shouting, waving, embracing. Families were crying with joy. Taxi drivers were yelling, holding up small handwritten signs. He clutched the strap of his bag. His mother's $2,000 minus the cab fare and the water was all he had in the world. His plan, if it could be called that, was simple. Find a sign for a bus, take it into the city, and then walk until he found the cheapest, most miserable hostel in Rome, a place for €10 a night. Then, and only then, would he open the heavy wax-sealed letter. He scanned the crowd looking for a sign that said autobus or treno. His eyes passed over the sea of eager faces and taxi signs. Then he saw it. It was not a crumpled piece of cardboard. It was a professional black sign held by a man in a perfectly tailored dark suit. The man was older, perhaps 60, with a full head of distinguished silver hair and a calm, patient face. The sign, printed in a clean, elegant font, said 2 words, Mr. Alex Riley. Alex froze. His heart gave a painful jolt. It was a mistake. It had to be. A different Alex Riley. A coincidence of cruel cosmic proportions. He started to look away to search for the bus sign again, but the man's eyes met his. They were kind, steady, and searching. The man seemed to recognize him. Moving as if in a dream, Alex walked toward him, his legs feeling disconnected from his body. "Excuse me," Alex said, his voice a dry croak. "I am Alex Riley." The man's patient expression broke into a warm, respectful smile. He dipped his head slightly. "Sir," he said. His voice was deep, his English perfect, warmed by a rich Italian accent. "You have finally arrived. We were expecting you." "You were—" Alex was completely bewildered. "Who is we?" "The master arranged everything, sir," the man said. He gestured to himself. "I am Marco. It is an honor to meet you." Alex's foggy brain tried to process the words. "The master. My grandfather, Arthur Vance, he is dead. He passed away." Marco's smile softened into a sad, genuine expression. "Yes, sir. A great loss. We were very sorry to hear it." He looked at Alex with understanding. "Mr. Arthur, he arranged this many, many months ago. He was very precise. He told me to be here to meet this exact flight from Detroit. He said you would be tired." Before Alex could respond, Marco gently, firmly took the duffel bag from his numb hand. "We have a long journey ahead. Please come with me. The car is waiting." Alex was too stunned to resist. He just followed Marco, a silent ghost in his wake. Marco did not lead him to the chaotic taxi rank. He led him through a set of sliding glass doors to a private curb reserved for professional drivers. He stopped beside a car that made Alex's breath catch. It was a Mercedes S-Class. It was impossibly black, so clean and polished that it reflected the Italian sky like a dark mirror. It was less a car and more a piece of silent, powerful sculpture. The contrast was a physical shock. He thought of his 1999 Honda Civic with its rattling engine and scraping brakes. A car that was at this very moment being seized by a bank he had never heard of for a debt he did not owe. Marco pressed a button on a key fob and the car beeped softly. He opened the rear door, holding it for Alex. "Please, Mr. Riley," Marco said. "Get some rest. It is a long drive." This was not a joke. Or if it was, the punchline was something he could not begin to comprehend. He was not in charge. He was not making decisions. He was a piece being moved across a board by a dead man's hand. Completely out of options. Alex slid into the car. The seat was not leather. It was a cloud. The door closed with a heavy, satisfying, and utterly silent thud, sealing out the noise and chaos of the airport. The world disappeared. The Mercedes moved with a silence that was more unnerving than noise. It was a complete absence of sound, a perfect sealed capsule gliding through the chaos of Rome's ancient noisy streets. Alex stared out the window, a passive observer. He watched mopeds weave between thousand-year-old ruins and modern apartment blocks. He felt a profound sense of dislocation, as if he were watching a movie about someone else's life. Marco drove with calm, focused precision, his hands steady on the leather wheel. He did not speak. The silence stretched, filled only by the whisper of the tires on cobblestone. For 20 minutes, Alex was too paralyzed by the strangeness of it all to ask the questions burning in his throat. But as the car passed under a massive stone aqueduct and onto a wide modern highway, the autostrada, his anxiety finally overpowered his stun. The city began to thin, replaced by fields and tall, slender stone pines. "Marco," Alex said. His voice was hoarse. "Yes, sir." Marco replied, his eyes on the road. "Where are we going? I mean, really. My grandfather, he never talked about Italy. He did not have friends here. He did not have property here. I would know." Marco was quiet for a long moment, navigating a merge. "Mr. Vance was a very private man, sir. He did not perhaps share everything with your family in Detroit." "What does that mean?" "It means he knew this place. He knew it very well. We are traveling to the Sabine Hills north of Rome. We are going to the Villa Montalcino." The name meant nothing to Alex. "A hotel. He booked me a hotel." A small, genuine smile touched the corners of Marco's mouth. He glanced at Alex in the rearview mirror. "No, Mr. Riley, not a hotel. It was his." Alex stared at the back of the man's silver head. "His? What, like he rented it for the month? A timeshare?" "He owned it, sir," Marco said simply. "He purchased the estate 45 years ago." The words hit Alex like a physical blow. 45 years. "Yes, sir, as I understand it." "That is impossible. That cannot be right. He lived in Detroit. Vance Shipping is in Detroit. He was there." "He was there, yes," Marco agreed, his voice gentle. "But he came here. Every September, for the entire month, without fail. He always traveled alone." Alex leaned his head back against the plush, cool leather. 45 years. The number echoed in his mind. It was an impossible span of time. It was an entire lifetime. A second parallel life running alongside the one everyone knew. Longer than his own father, Alex's father, had been alive. This was not a joke. This was not a prank. This was a secret on an operatic scale. He thought of the fights. His uncle Marcus, his cousin Ethan, all of them clawing at Vance Shipping. They were fighting over an empire in Detroit, believing it was the entire kingdom, but it was not. It was a decoy. He thought of the faint pencil marks on the ticket envelope. 1947, the year his grandfather left the army. The year after the war. The math began to click in his head with a terrifying cold logic. His grandfather had started his secret life, before his American family even truly began. This place, this Villa Montalcino, was not an afterthought. It was the original plan. The game. His mother had called it a game. He was beginning to understand that he had not just been given a new piece. He had been moved to an entirely different board. The highway had long since vanished. For the last hour, they had been on smaller, winding roads that climbed higher and higher. The scenery was no longer urban. It was ancient, breathtaking, and utterly alien. Rolling hills, covered in the silver green of ancient olive groves, stretched as far as he could see. The fields were striped with neat rows of grapevines heavy with fruit. The sunlight was thick and golden, illuminating farmhouses built from stone that looked as old as the hills themselves. The Mercedes turned off the paved road onto a white gravel path, a strada bianca that kicked up a plume of fine dust. The path was narrow, lined with tall, dark cypress trees that stood like sentinels. They climbed one final steep hill. Ahead, Alex saw a massive gate. It was not modern. It was made of heavy black wrought iron, clearly hundreds of years old, set between two massive stone pillars. As the car drew closer, Marco slowed not to a stop, but to a crawl. Alex's eyes focused on the intricate ironwork in the center of the two gates. It was not just a random swirl or a family crest. It was a specific, unique symbol. His blood turned to ice. It was a single twisting grapevine wrapped around a tall stone tower. His hand, shaking, dove into his jacket pocket. His fingers fumbled, closing around the cold, dented brass of the compass. He pulled it out. He did not need to open it. He just stared at the etching on the lid. He looked from the compass in his hand to the gate in front of him. They were identical, the symbol his father had kept, the symbol of this hidden place. He heard his mother's voice in his head. Your father said he used it to find his true north. The compass was not broken. It was not a useless toy. It was not pointing north. It was pointing here. The massive iron gates swung open inward silently, presumably opened by Marco with a remote. Marco did not acknowledge the symbol. He did not look back at Alex's pale, stunned face. He simply drove the car through. The gravel driveway continued for another 100 yards, winding around a final bend, and then the house appeared. Alex made a small, involuntary sound. It was not a fortress of cold glass and stone like the Vance mansion in Detroit. It was beautiful. It was 3 stories high, built from a warm, honey-colored stone that seemed to glow in the afternoon sun. A dark red terracotta roof sloped over arched windows. Ivy clung to the walls, and massive pots of red geraniums flanked the heavy wooden front door. It sat on the very crest of the hill, and it overlooked a valley that took his breath away. The entire valley, as far as the eye could see, was a perfectly manicured, endless ocean of grapevines. The car crunched to a final stop on the gravel courtyard. Marco turned off the engine. The resulting silence was absolute, broken only by the chirping of cicadas in the warm air. "We are here, Mr. Riley," Marco said, his voice quiet. "Welcome to Villa Montalcino." Alex was still staring at the identical symbols, the compass in his hand, feeling impossibly heavy when the massive dark wooden door of the villa swung open. Marco had not yet taken the keys from the ignition. The door seemed to open on its own, as if in anticipation. A woman stood in the archway. She was tall, impossibly elegant, and Alex guessed at least 80 years old. Her silver hair was pulled back in a severe, perfect bun, revealing a face of aristocratic bone structure, lined with age but unbent by it. She wore a simple black dress and a single string of pearls. She stood with a stillness, a poise that reminded him instantly of his grandfather. Then her eyes met his, and the stillness broke. They were the same eyes, Arthur Vance's eyes, a pale, piercing steel gray, and they were at this moment overflowing with tears. She did not wait. She glided down the 2 stone steps, her movements fluid and urgent. She walked right past Marco, who was now holding the car door, and came directly to Alex. She did not ask his name. She did not introduce herself. She simply reached out with 2 soft, warm hands and grasped his, pulling him closer. "He is here," she whispered, her voice a low, melodic tremor. "After all this time, you are here." Alex was mute. He was paralyzed by the strangeness, the intensity of the moment, the raw, ancient grief in her gaze. Marco stepped forward, his voice quiet and respectful. "Alex, please, allow me to introduce your grandmother, Countess Isabella Vance." The words were so absurd, so impossible, that Alex let out a small, sharp laugh. "That cannot be. I am sorry, you must be... There is a mistake. My grandmother is dead. My grandmother, Clara Vance. She died 12 years ago in Detroit." The woman Isabella smiled through her tears. It was a sad, beautiful, knowing smile. She reached up and touched his cheek. "Your American grandmother is gone, yes, Caro," she said. Her English was flawless, accented not like Marco's, but like a 1940s film star. "She is at rest, but she pressed her hand to her heart, "am very much alive, and I have waited a very long time to meet you." She looked at him, her gray eyes scanning his face with a lifetime of hunger. "Oh," she breathed. "You have his eyes, the same fire, the same storm, but your mouth, that is your father's, that is Mark. You have your father's kind heart." She gripped his hand tighter. "Now you must come inside. You look exhausted, and we have so much to talk about." Alex followed her, a man walking in a dream. Marco trailed behind them with his duffel bag. The inside of the villa was nothing like the cold, imposing museum of the Detroit mansion. It was warm. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating rooms filled with comfortable, elegant furniture walls packed with books and art that looked both ancient and loved. It was a home, and it was filled with photographs. Every surface, every table, every stretch of wall between the overflowing bookcases held a framed picture. Alex's eyes scanned them as he walked. He saw Arthur Vance everywhere. But it was an Arthur he had never seen. An Arthur in his 30s, laughing, his arms slung around another man. An Arthur in his 50s, wearing a straw hat, his hands black with dirt, proudly holding a massive cluster of grapes. An Arthur in his 70s, his hair white, teaching a small dark-haired boy how to play chess. He stopped, drawn to a large silver frame on the mantelpiece. It was a wedding photo. Arthur Vance, young and Pass, over 1947. Alex's blood ran cold. He turned his head, staring at the old ticket envelope Marco had placed on a side table, the faint pencil marks. 1947. It was not a discharge date. It was a wedding date. "He told me you would come," Isabella said, her voice soft. She had been watching him. "He told me, the boy who plays chess, my Mark's boy, he will understand the last move." "I do not understand any of this," Alex said, his voice a hoarse whisper. "Who are you?" "What is this place? My grandfather—" "Your grandfather," she said, sitting in a high-backed chair, "was the love of my life." And then, as the golden Italian sun streamed through the window, she told him the story. "I met him in 1946, she began. "He was a young American soldier, handsome, serious, stationed here just after the war. He was supposed to go home. All the other boys went home, but he stayed. He said he saw the future in these hills. He stayed for me. We were married the next year, 1947, in the little stone church in the village. It was a secret. My family, they were old nobility. They did not approve of an American soldier with no title. And his family, well, he did not speak of them." She gestured out the window toward the endless valley of vines. "This was all my family had left. It was almost nothing, just rocks and a few dozen forgotten vines. But Arthur saw what it could be. We started the vineyard together, just the two of us in the land." Her face clouded. "Then we had our son, our beautiful boy Matteo." Matteo, a new uncle. Alex's mind reeled. "Matteo was just 1 year old," Isabella continued, her voice tightening. "And the war in Korea began. Arthur, he was a man of intense, terrible duty. He felt he had to go back. He had to enlist. He told me it would be for 6 months. Just 6 months, he promised. He would arrange his affairs in America and come home to us, to me and to Matteo." She paused, looking down at her hands. "He went back to Detroit, and he met the other woman, your American grandmother, Clara. She became pregnant, very, very quickly." Alex felt the pieces slam into place. "With my uncle," he breathed. "With Marcus." Isabella nodded a single pained motion. "With Marcus. And Arthur was trapped. He was a man of honor, Alex, but he was trapped between two different impossible honors. He could not abandon his new son in America. He could not divorce a pregnant woman, but he could not abandon us, his wife, his first son. So," she said, looking up, her steel gray eyes meeting his, "he did neither. He kept us. He built 2 lives. He lived his loud public life in Detroit, building that shipping company with his new family. But every year, every September, he came home, to me, to Matteo, to his real life." "But the company—" "Alex Stammerass, Vance Shipping, that," Isabella said with a faint dismissive wave of her hand, "was for them, for Marcus and his children. The noise, the steel, the fighting. Arthur knew that is all they valued. He let them have their prize. But he never stopped loving this place, she said, a fierce pride in her voice. This was his heart. He sent money, every month for 45 years, silently, securely. He turned our little patch of rocks into Vance Vintners International. She looked at Alex, her expression intent. It is not a small vineyard anymore, Caro. It is one of the largest privately held wineries in the entire region. He built his true empire here, in secret. Isabella stood. She was not a frail old woman, she was a queen. She walked to a heavy antique wooden cabinet against the wall, opened one of the doors and pressed her thumb to a small hidden panel. A modern digital safe was built into the wall. She entered a code and it clicked open. She did not pull out a dusty old will. She pulled out a thick, heavy, leather-bound dossier. It was new, professionally prepared. She placed it on the polished wooden table in front of Alex. The embossed gold letters on the cover read, Vance Vintners International, Asset and Holdings Portfolio, Confidential. Your cousins, she said, her voice sharp, were fighting over the scraps, the debts, the liabilities. Arthur was very clear in his instructions to me and to Mr. Davies in Detroit. That life, that company was a distraction. She placed her hand flat on the cover of the dossier. This is the true inheritance. He left it all to you, Alex. Alex stared at the book. His throat was dry. What? What is it? Isabella looked him in the eye, her steel-gray gaze unflinching. It is $47 million, she said, each word a stone dropping into a deep well. In assets, property, and liquid holdings, free of all debt. And it is all yours. Arthur said you were the only one who would understand what to do with it. Alex's head was a roaring vacuum. $47 million. An inheritance built on a 45-year secret. A new grandmother, a new uncle. He stared at the gleaming gold embossed title of the dossier, his hand hovering over it, afraid to touch it, afraid it would vanish. I do not understand. He managed to say, his voice a dry rasp. How can this be real? Isabella's expression was one of profound empathy. It is a lot, Caro. Too much to be told by an old woman you have just met. She moved from the table to a carved wooden desk in the corner. Arthur knew this. He knew words were not enough. He did not want you to take my word for it. He left a final message for you. She opened a heavy, older model laptop. It was not the sleek, thin device of a modern CEO, but a thick, durable machine built for work. The screen flickered to life, the fan whirring. He recorded this about a month ago, Isabella said softly, her hand resting on the back of Alex's chair. Here, when he knew the end was near. He told me to show it to you only after I had told you the story. She clicked a single video file on the desktop. The media player opened. The screen went black, and then Arthur Vance was there. It was his grandfather, but not the titan of industry Alex remembered from boardrooms and holidays. This man looked his age. He was sitting in a comfortable armchair, not a leather throne. A warm, knitted blanket was spread across his knees. He was wearing a simple, dark blue sweater, not a power suit. His skin was thin, his face gaunt, but his eyes. His steel-gray eyes were exactly the same. They were not cold, not angry. They were sharp, lucid, and utterly, profoundly peaceful. He looked directly into the camera. Hello, Alex. His grandfather's voice rasped from the tinny speakers. It was weaker, but the familiar rumble was still there. If you are watching this, it means you did it. You trusted me. You got on the plane. Arthur gave a small, dry cough and adjusted himself in the chair. You passed the test. I imagine you are confused. You are angry. You are wondering why I put you through that humiliation at the will reading. He paused as if gathering his strength. I had to, Alex. It was the only way. Your cousins, your uncle, your aunt, they are hollow. They are brilliant at the appearance of success, but they have no substance. They worship the shell, the brand, the title. They only wanted the shiny, empty toys. So that is precisely what I gave them. A faint, thin smile touched Arthur's lips. Here is the truth, boy. Vance Shipping Industries is a corpse. It has been hemorrhaging money for 3 years. I have been cooking the books, moving liabilities, keeping the banks at bay with my personal reputation. It is a house of cards, and it is about to collapse. Ethan, in his profound arrogance, just signed his name to a catastrophe. He is not a CEO. He is the fall guy. Alex's hand clutched the arm of his chair. The rest of it, Arthur continued, it is all smoke. The Hamptons properties are mortgaged to 70% of their value. The Manhattan penthouse has 3 mortgages, Alex. 3. It is worthless. And that yacht. The Serenity. He let out a dry, papery chuckle. It is a lease. A very expensive, very foolish lease, which expires in 2 months. I left them a pile of anchors, Alex. And they celebrated. They actually cheered as I tied the anchors to their legs. Why? Because they value nothing but you. Arthur's gaze seemed to pierce through the screen through time and find Alex sitting in the warm Italian villa. You were different. You never asked me for a single dollar. You never asked for a job. You just came to my study week after week to play chess. You were the only one who ever saw me, the man, not the bank account. You chose meaning over money. While they were all trying to figure out how to get into my wallet, you were just trying to figure out how to beat my queen's gambit. So I am giving you what is real. This vineyard, Vance Vintners. This is the true empire. It is real, it is profitable, and it is built on rock, not on sand. It is all yours. Your family here, Isabella, your uncle Matteo, they are real too. Matteo is a good man. He looks just like your father, Mark. He has been running this place waiting for you. Then Arthur's peaceful expression hardened. A familiar cold fire entered his eyes. Now we must discuss Ethan. I know about the $50,000 loan. You did not think I would. I knew. I knew he scammed you. I knew he used your good name to steal. That Alex was his final test. I gave him every advantage. And with his final move, he chose fraud. He failed, miserably. But do not worry about that $50,000. It is a fly. I have already arranged the solution. Mr. Davies back in Detroit has the original loan application. He has a forensic analysis proving your signature was a forgery. That evidence combined with one other fact gives you total control. Arthur leaned closer to the camera. You see that massive crushing debt Vance Shipping is drowning in. It is not owed to a dozen banks. It is owed to one, a single private holding company based in Italy. As of this moment, you are the owner of that company. You, Alex, are Ethan's sole creditor. You own all of their debt. The room spun. Alex could not breathe. Which brings me, Arthur said, his voice softer, to the compass, and to your father. Mark was the only one in the Detroit family who knew. He knew about Isabella. He knew about Matteo. I trusted him with the secret, but he was weak. He loved your mother, but he was afraid of me. He was afraid of Marcus. He failed to stand up to me. He failed to claim his family. He died with that secret and that failure weighing him down. That compass was my gift to him, a reminder of this place, his true north. He gave it to you, hoping you would be stronger. Arthur's gaze was now a fierce final command. Do not repeat your father's mistake, Alex. Do not be weak. Use the truth. Use the power I have given you. The old man looked exhausted, but a small, satisfied smile played on his lips. They played checkers. I played chess. And I have set the board for you. He raised one thin, papery hand as if moving a queen. The next move is yours, Alex. Go. Put them in checkmate, my boy. The video file ended. The screen went black, reflecting Alex's pale, stunned, and transformed face. The following 3 weeks were a re-education. Alex's life did not just change, it was rebuilt from the foundations up. He woke not to a water-stained ceiling, but to the Tuscan sun streaming through the windows of his room at the villa. He spent his days not in a stuffy classroom, but walking the endless rows of grapevines with his uncle Matteo. Matteo was the father Alex barely remembered. He was warm, patient, and had the same kind eyes as Alex's father, Mark. He taught Alex the business not from a spreadsheet, but from the soil. Alex learned about the harvest, the crushing, the fermentation. He met his Italian cousins Sophia and Leo, who welcomed him not as an outcast but as long-lost family. They ate long dinners on the terrace, drinking the wine their family had made for decades, talking and laughing late into the night. For the first time in his life, Alex felt a sense of peace. He felt whole. The anxiety that had lived in his chest for his entire adult life, the $50,000 terror, the humiliation from Jessica, it all began to recede. It did not disappear, but it became small, a distant noise from a forgotten world. He was healing. Then that world came roaring back. It was just after midnight. Alex was in the villa's library reading one of his grandfather's old books on Roman history. The house was silent. His phone, which he now rarely checked, lit up on the table beside him. The call was coming from Detroit. The name on the screen made his blood run cold. Ethan Vance. Alex stared at it, his heart beginning to hammer. He let it ring. Once, twice, 3 times. The man on the video his grandfather spoke in his head. The next move is yours. He took a slow breath, composing his face, and pressed the icon. Hello, Ethan. A sound came through the phone. It was not a voice. It was a choked, desperate sob, a terrible animal noise of pure panic. Alex! Oh my God, Alex, is that you? Thank God. Thank God you answered. You have to help me, please. You have to help me. Alex sat back in the heavy leather chair. He was calm. The panic was on the other end of the line where it belonged. What is it, Ethan? It is gone. Alex. Ethan was hyperventilating, the words tumbling out in a broken, incoherent rush. It is all gone. The company, it is bankrupt. It is a shell. The creditors are here. They are everywhere. They are swarming the building. The books are fake. Grandfather, he faked all of it. He set us up. He set me up. Is that all? Alex said. It was not a question. No! Ethan shrieked, his voice cracking into a desperate high pitch. My father, your uncle. They are going to arrest him, Alex, for fraud. The penthouse, they seized it this morning. The bank took it. The yacht, it was a rental. A rental. They towed it away. We have nothing. We have nothing. Alex waited. He knew this was not the real reason for the call. This was the overture. He said nothing, just listened to the silence filled only by Ethan's ragged, terrified breathing. And Alex, Ethan finally whispered the word, choked with a new, sharper terror. The bank, the Commercial Bank of Detroit. The $50,000 loan. Alex's grip tightened on the phone. Yes, the loan. They know. Ethan sobbed, the words dissolving. They know it was fraud. They have paperwork. They are talking about criminal charges. Against me. Not just my dad. Against me. The confession came in a desperate torrent. I did not use it for the MBA, Alex. I did not. I had debts. Gambling debts. A lot. I thought I could pay it back. I thought when grandfather died, I would have millions. I would pay it all back. No one would ever know. But he left me nothing. He left me this. He set me up. What do you want, Ethan? Alex asked, his voice perfectly level, perfectly cold. You have to tell them you gave me permission. Ethan begged, his voice dissolving into a pathetic whine. You have to call them. Please. Just tell them it was a misunderstanding. Tell them you were an investor. Tell them you knew anything. Please, Alex, they will send me to prison. Please, cousin, I am begging you, save me. I will do anything. I will pay you back. I swear I will. I will. Alex stood up. He walked to the tall window and looked out at the moonlit valley, the thousands of vines sleeping under the Italian sky. His empire. I will be back in the States soon, Alex said, his voice as cold and clear as the night air. We will talk then. He pressed the red icon, ending the call, cutting off Ethan's final desperate plea. Oi ben nói đúng. Xin lỗi vì sự nhầm lẫn đó. Tôi đã truyền ngôn ngữ một cách vô tình. Chúng ta đang tuân theo các yêu cầu kỹ thuật một cách nghiêm ngặt. Đây là phiên bản chính xác cho 4.3 được viết bằng tiếng Anh Mỹ, US English, theo đúng định dạng. Cảm ơn bạn đã chỉ ra điều đó. Hãy tiếp tục. 4.3. Checkmate 700 words. The conference room at Vance Shipping's New York headquarters was a tomb. A month ago, this room had been the center of Ethan's new empire. Now it was an empty shell. The massive polished mahogany table was still there, but the chairs were gone, replaced by 3 cheap metal folding chairs. File boxes and cartons were stacked against the walls, taped and labeled for seizure. Alex Riley walked in. He was not the man who had left Detroit. He wore a custom-tailored Italian suit in dark navy, a suit that probably cost more than his old Honda. It was armor. Flanking him were 2 men, Mr. Davies carrying a perfect leather briefcase, and Marco, who posted himself by the door hands, clasped a silent, imposing presence. On the other side of the vast table sat the ruins of the family. Marcus, his face gray and puffy, his expensive suit wrinkled. Eleanor, her pearls looking dull against her pale skin, her eyes red. And Ethan was a ghost. He had lost 20 pounds, his eyes were wild, and his hands were shaking so badly he had to hide them under his legs. Marcus looked up, His eyes bloodshot, he tried to summon one last pathetic shred of arrogance. "What are you doing here, Alex?" he sneered. "Did you come all this way just to laugh at us?" "No," Alex said. His voice was quiet and it filled the empty room. "I came to collect a debt." Ethan flinched. Marcus frowned, confused. "Debt? What are you talking about? We are bankrupt. Everyone is getting in line." "Not everyone," Alex said, and he took the seat at the head of the table. Mr. Davies stepped forward and placed his briefcase on the table. He opened it and took out a single file. "A brief summary for you, Mr. Vance," the lawyer said, his voice flat. "As you are aware, Vance Shipping has outstanding unserviceable liabilities totaling just over $12 million. What you are not aware of is that those debts are no longer held by a banking consortium." He slid the file across the table. "Vance Vintners International, a private holding company based in Italy, acquired your entire debt portfolio last week. To put it simply, gentlemen, you do not owe the bank. You owe him." Mr. Davies extended one long, precise finger and pointed it at Alex. The silence was absolute. Marcus stared at the paper, his mouth opening and closing. Eleanor let out a strange, choked sound. "You," Marcus whispered, his voice cracking. "Vance Vintners. That is not possible." "It is very possible," Alex said. "I am the sole proprietor." Ethan looked up, his face a mask of complete uncomprehending terror. "And that brings me to you, Ethan." Alex continued, his voice lowering, becoming personal. "We have a private matter to discuss. A $50,000 matter." Ethan began to tremble violently. I have right here," Alex said, motioning to Mr. Davies' briefcase. "A forensic analysis of the loan application you had me sign. Proof of signature forgery, proof of wire fraud. I could call the police. Right now, you would be in a cell before dinner." It was the final blow. The last string holding Ethan together snapped. He slid from his chair and collapsed onto the dirty carpet, a full, racking, uncontrollable sob tearing out of his chest. "Please," he wailed. "Please, Alex, do not. I will do anything. Anything. Please." Alex looked down at his cousin, the man who had laughed at his economy ticket, the man who had stolen from him and left him to drown. He felt nothing. No, that was not true. He felt the cold, clean satisfaction of an equation being solved. He stood. "Here is what is going to happen." Alex said, his voice a judge's command. "You, Marcus, you are an auditor. You will be a junior auditor for the vineyard in Italy. You will report to my uncle Matteo. You will learn to read a balance sheet honestly, or you will be the first one in prison when I report your previous creative accounting." Marcus stared horrified. "Eleanor, you will assist him. As for Chloe, she will run our social media accounts, all of them, not for herself but for the wine. She will learn the difference between selling a product and selling her image. And you, Ethan." Alex walked around the table to stand over his cousin. "You are not going to Italy. You are staying here. You will run our logistics in the United States, from a rented warehouse in Detroit. You will be paid minimum wage, and 20% of your salary and Marcus's and Chloe's will be garnished. Every month, until you have paid back every single dollar of the $12 million you and your father stole from my grandfather's company. And," he added, "the $50,000 you stole from me." They stared, trapped, beaten, and utterly broken. They had no moves left to make. "You will accept these terms," Alex said, walking to the door. "Or Mr. Davies will be filing the fraud charges against all three of you this afternoon. The choice is yours." He did not look back. He left them in the tomb they had built for themselves. The game was over. 1 year later. The summer sun was warm and golden, illuminating the endless rolling hills of the vineyard. On the terrace of the Villa Montalcino, a marble chessboard sat between 2 glasses of deep red wine. Alex Riley, now 30 years old, studied the board. He looked different. The anxiety was gone from his eyes, replaced by a quiet, settled confidence. His uncle Matteo sat across from him, smiling as he captured Alex's knight. "Careless nephew," Matteo said, his eyes twinkling. "You are thinking about Detroit." Alex laughed, leaning back. "Maybe. I just approved the budget for the new warehouse. Ethan actually turned in a report that was not a complete disaster. He hates it, but he is working." "Good," Matteo said. "And Chloe? Her social media campaign for the new reserve was surprisingly effective. She hates it too, but they respect the work. And," Alex added, "they are paying back the debt. Slowly." Alex's life was no longer a frantic scramble for survival. It was a life of purpose. He still taught history, but only part-time at a small international school in Rome. Last month, he had used his own money to take his entire class on a field trip to Florence to see the Uffizi Gallery. His mother, Sarah, had met them there. She was retired now, living in a beautiful apartment overlooking the Arno, happier than he had ever seen her. His phone buzzed on the table. A private email. He glanced at the sender. Jessica. His heart did not leap. It did not sink. It did nothing. He opened it. The message was short. Alex, I heard you are in Italy. I always loved Italy. I think about you. I made a mistake. A small, genuine smile touched Alex's lips. It was not a smile of malice or even of victory. It was a smile of indifference. He pressed delete. He looked back at the board, then out at the valley, his home. Your father, Matteo said softly, following his gaze. Arthur. He always said the winner of the game is not the one who takes the most pieces. Alex looked at his uncle. He is the one, Matteo continued, who knows which pieces truly matter. Alex looked out at the sprawling, prosperous vineyard, the legacy of a 45-year secret. He won, Alex said, his voice full of respect for the old man. Matteo shook his head, pushing a pawn forward. No, Alex, you won. You just did not know you were in the game. Alex reached into his pocket. He pulled out the old, dented brass compass. He no longer carried it for guidance. He carried it as a reminder. He clicked open the lid. The glass was still cracked. But the needle was not spinning. It was steady. For the first time, locked on pointing true north. True inheritance isn't the wealth you are given, but the character you've built in silence. When others value only the shining hollow prizes, the greatest strength lies in choosing meaning over money. The world may laugh at the small ticket you hold, not knowing it's the key to the entire kingdom.